Hello, everyone. Very good evening. So, welcome back for AZ900 Fundamentals Cloud Festival. So, this is our third day. So, totally, we have completed 2 days of discussion completely with respect to the AZ900. We understood a lot of concepts related to the AZ900. So, going ahead, so today we are going to discuss and module 3. So, the last 2 days, we are discussing in detail about and module 1, and also we discussed in module 2 in much more in detail. So before going to the module 3, let's look into the module 2, what all that we have discussed and what are all the topics that we have covered in the module 2. So in the module 2, that is an Azure architecture and services. So here we have discussed in multiple topics, especially with respect to the architecture and with respect to the compute and networking services, and also in the aspects of storage services. So very first, we have discussed concepts related to an architecture. So there we've understood much more in detail about what is region and what is an region pair. So we try to understand what actually these regions are mean to, and we understood how these regions are interconnected as a region pair. And going ahead, so we understood what are all the two different sovereign regions. That is, one is an US government and the China. These are the two sovereign regions that we have understood. And in detailed understanding about the regions, so we depthly understood about what is a zone. So in the region, so if there is a region, what is a zone? And also if it is a zone, and what is the data center? So we try to understand in detail about the zone and the data center. So in the first architecture components. Once after the complete understanding about an region pair, availability zones, and the data center, we understood much more in detail about multiple things. That is an Azure resources, resource group, and the what is the Azure subscriptions will be there, and also multiple subscriptions which can be handled from the Azure management group. What does it mean? And we then we jumped into an Azure compute and the networking services. So this was a very interesting subtopic in the module 2. It's like an understanding what all the compute services are. So there it is like a virtual machine, and why it is unused, and hypervisor. So it's like an Azure container instance. So if it is with an Azure container instance, it's like an Azure Kubernetes service, what it means, Azure functions, Azure virtual machine options, the options that is like an Azure virtual machine VM, virtual machine scale set, and the machine availability sets, and virtual desktop, virtual Windows virtual desktop. So these are like a different concepts, the virtual machine options that we have discussed in detail and we understood. So VM resources also we understood. If we need a VM, so what actually basically it is required. So what are all the different resources are required? So to compute, storage, and networking. So as the three main resources, what are all the components are required in the virtual machine? So we understood those things as well. And going ahead, so we understood about in containers, how these containers will be created, or as like how these containers will be handled. What is the role of Kubernetes? What is the concept actually in between the relation between the Kubernetes and the container? So that we have understood. So then jumping onto the networking service, a lot of interesting concepts related to the networking, like what is a virtual network? Because all the device, all the system, the machine itself in a virtual. So the virtual machine, how this virtual machine will be interconnected using a virtual network, and network pairing. So Azure DNS, VPN gateway, public public and private endpoints. So these are like a different concepts which we have discussed. So as a last subtopic, last but one, so in the module 2, we discussed about the storage services. So in the storage services, like an Azure, especially it's like an Azure storage, managed disk, backup and recovery storage, database services, Cosmo DB, SQL database. So, and even the SQL database with MySQL and the SQL database with an PostgreSQL. So, and the data warehouse also that we have discussed in detail. So not more that we have discussed in detail, and then we understood what is actually the identity, the concept. So identity concept was like probably you remember yesterday as we discussed much more in detail about an Azure Active Directory, right? So that is an AAD. So it is like Azure AD. So Active Directory, which is a very interesting concept we discussed in detail, and also we discussed about an authentication, authorization, root access, and also Active Directory Connect, and in the authentication process, what is an SSO, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, passwordless, and multiple additional identities. All those things that we have discussed and we have understood from the module 2 in detail. So let's jump on to the module 3. So we'll try to understand in detail about a module 3 today. Yes. So the model 3 is completely about hand management and the governance. So what are the things that we are managing? So it comes in picture here. And what is in the management perspective, obviously what they will look into it. What is the cost, price, all right? So it is like, and what is the operational expenditure, or is like a maintenance part, and what it could be an initial capital expenditure, that is the capex and the opex part. So it's that's what we are going to discuss much more about the cost management in the AZ 900. How it will be like, and if you are making open resources. So how the cost management could be handled, or what all the different tools will be there for the cost management in the Azure, especially in the cloud computing part. And also we are going to discuss about and governance and the compliance part. So if it is a governance part, it's like in rules, set of rules. So to handle those set of rules, so what all the things are available? Can I create my own rule? So can I create some conditions in as per my requirement? So those are the things that we are going to discuss. And even with respect to the managing and deploying the Azure resources, what are all the tools that are available? So with respect to handling the resources, how it can be created, what are all the things that we can create with respect to the Azure. So if I want to create a resource, or if I want to delete a resource, what kind of an tools that I need to take care? So I need to make use of it. So that's like in Cloud Shell, command line interface, and the PowerShell in the Azure portal. So these are the default things are there. And even the monitoring tool, if anything goes bad, if any issues are there, which tool from the Azure is going to intimate to the customer, or intimate to the owner of those who have taken the subscription. So that all we are going to understand in detail today. So we'll start with an cost management. So cost management, when we think, so it is like why we go with an especially with respect to the cloud. So cost management in different perspective. When we want to save the amounts, we want to save the capex or the opex part, the amount or as the investment. So in such case, so when we think of like an especially with respect to the cloud, is that going to be an expensive, or is that going to be an cheaper than the on-premises? So that's what we want to go and make a comparison. It could be like a monitoring, allocate, or optimizing the cloud cost. So and the transparency, how the transparency it is in the pricing or billing perspective, how the accuracy it is there in the pricing and billing perspective, and how efficiently it will charge. So based upon my use. So everywhere we make use of a term called like an pay as you go. So as much use the like an inbound data or the outbound data or the data. So as much you use the data access, or as much you use especially the data to the analytics or as the resources, especially in the Azure platform. So based upon that, you are going to pay over there. So factors which are affecting the cost. So there are multiple factors could have come up. So if you look into it, first thing is like different services are built based upon the different factors. It's not like for each service will be just if you take the service, it will be charged, and it's not like a straightforward. So multiple factors will be considered when in the charging, or as when specifically you will be charged with respect to like and the resources that you're using, or as what kind of resources it is, what kind of features it is offering, based on all the different aspects, so different metrics. So these resources will be charged. So the first thing comes in mind, is there any free services? Yes. So there are some of the free services are there from the Azure side. So going to understand. So the list is like this. So it's a resource group. So we already in the yesterday discussion, the last class discussion, we understood what is an Azure resource group. So and also we understood like an Azure resource group means it is like a group of resources. So resource group is like a container. So as we have already discussed, so that works like an related resources to for an Azure solution. So resource group can include all the resources for the solution or itself like and the resources that you want to manage as a group. So it can be from different regions. It's not mean that it has to be from the same region. The resources has to be from the same region. So the resources can be from the different region. So you can group them. So let's say, for example, all the databases, based upon the type of resources, you can group it. So all the databases are in a single group, or else based upon the project, you can group the resources. So from the different region. So the resource group actually stores the metadata about the resources. So which are all the resources are there, how many resources are, and based upon that resources, how much the billing is happening. So when you specify a location for the resource group, so you're like specifying where that metadata is stored. So the metadata is like and the information or is the data related to the resources, related to the list of resources. The metadata means it's not an user data, it is like an information related to the resources. So that when you choose a region to store the resource group means you are going to store the metadata related to the resources in that region. So when you specify the location as like in resource group, you will specify where that metadata has to be stored, and for compliance reasons, you may need to ensure that your data is like stored in a particular region, so it will make it easy to access, right? And the second thing is like an Azure virtual network. So we understood in detail. We discussed much more like an what is an virtual machine. So in the Azure, what is a virtual machine? How that virtual machine is going to be created, or how many virtual machines can be created, and all. So if we talk about a virtual network, so Azure Virtual Network is a representation of your own network in the cloud. The things understand that. So when you create a network in your home, that is like a local network. So the concept like a private network and the public network. So if you are creating like a private network, and it means if you are going to create a network locally, so in your on premises, so that is completely your private network. It will be owned by you. So you can change the configurations of your network. So you can customize the rules, the firewall rules for your network. So the same way, the Azure Virtual Network, or else we can call it as like a VNet. So is representation of your own network, but it will be in a cloud. So it is like a logically isolation of the Azure cloud, so dedicated to your subscription. It's not a part of the Azure. It's not like a part of the Azure. It's a part of an Azure network. It is completely isolated over there from them. So if you ask like, what are the different features in the Azure Virtual Network? So as I mentioned, it's like build an isolated and secure environment to run the virtual machines. So there are multiple machines because network is required to interact or to communicate in between the machines, right? So and between the applications, right? So this virtual network will support, it will create an isolated, secure environment. And it also connect to an on-premises data centers as well. So for a hybrid infrastructure, if it is like, and if you have some of the data, if you have some of the devices over the like in virtual machine in the cloud, and some of the devices data and all in on-premises. So it is like an hybrid infrastructure. So in such case, even you can create like, and you can connect on-premises data centers for the hybrid infrastructure so that you can control. Here you can bring in your own IP address, and you can bring in your own DNS servers, and you can bring in like a secure connection IPsec VPN, or as like an express route. So all these feasibilities will be there. So one more thing is like virtual network always like can connect the virtual machine and devices, no matter the location, so where they're using the software, what kind of a software you are using in a physical network, like layer 2 and layer 3 functions in the OSI model. So next concept is like an Azure load balancer. So to understand the load balancer, so it's a completely like, and probably you know the OSI layer 7 layers model. So in that the the layer 4, which is like an TCP and UDP protocol will come. So load balancer, what it will provide is, so that provides high availability by distributing the income traffic. So for example, if an IPL is going on, or else like a World Cup game is going on, so probably the only the live streaming will be there over the some of the platform like an Disney Hotstar and all, some of the example as a part of an example. So a lot of subscription will be taken, and lot of like the traffic will go. Lot of everyone will start to watch the, for example, like an IPL cricket. So if everyone is starting to watch, there will be a lot of traffic will come in. So the load balancer is the one which actually handles that. So the whatever the direct like in a lot of request will be coming in, incoming traffic will be coming over the LT virtual machines. The load balancer LT probe monitors and give the port of each virtual machine, and only like it will take care of distributing the traffic over the operational multiple virtual machines between the multiple systems. If a single system going to handle the huge traffic, it is going to get crash, it's going to get down. But the load balancer will make sure that it will be distributed among the virtual machines. So the next one is like an Azure Active Directory. So even in the Azure Active Directory, there will be like an premium, basics, and all will be there. If it is a basic, is like completely like a free, so it is like a very limited will be there. So if you take up like a basic, there could be like an only 50 accounts could be handled. But if you want like in 500 accounts, 500 roles, and even it could be like a huge number, so then it could be like a very expensive. So then you have to go with a standard membership or a second premium membership, and it's going to charge like an additional cost. So Azure Active Directory is completely the topic that as we have discussed yesterday. And then the next is like a network security groups. As we have discussed the security groups, so like in last class, we have discussed the multiple security groups, what are the different security groups, and even mentioned that it's like in completely each and every layer will have the security. So that's what each and every layer will take care of, and security, providing the security to the applications, and it makes sure that whatever the data, whatever the host, whatever the cloud computing services that you are using, it will be secured. The last one is like an pre-tier web applications. So free-tier web applications is like up to 10. It's not like mean that unlimited, you can run the applications as many as that you want. So there will be like a limited web applications that can be run. So free-tier web applications is support like an up to the 10 max. So it's not a huge one. So it's not going to work for the customer, those who wants to run a big business or as a huge business and all. So now the time to understand what are the different metrics it will be considered to charge or else for during the billing and for the cost. So when you take a subscription. So the metrics are like totally different in the Azure. So whenever you make use of an cloud computing, so the metric one of the metric could be like an pay based upon the usage. So how much you use, so you have to pay for that. So as many as much as the database, for example, the consumption model. So it's completely based upon the consumption model, as much as the database that you use. So you just pay for that. So it is like, and it could be like in 10 GB, or it could be like in 200 GB, or it's like in terabytes, or it's like, and it could be in petabytes used data. So based upon that aspect, it will be charged, and as much as like in the demand as well. If you have, it is completely scalable and elasticity based. So for example, as the customer increases, so based upon your business, so the model is like, as the customer have increased random, like immediately, so you don't want to worry about the infrastructure. So you don't want to worry about how to take care of the things and all. So as it's completely like a scalable, you just don't need to worry. So you just make use of the resources, and based upon the usage, based upon the accessing the services, you need to pay. There are like a lot of an opportunity for cost saving. So in the Azure functions, so like 1 million executions free per month. So 1 million executions like an Azure function, it's very less itself. If you build your own applications and all, so if you build your own business on the Azure, so 1 million executions of an Azure functions is like a free. It's like in very less as itself. So and 20 cents per million executions. So this is no need to worry about and remembering the price and all. And the cheapest virtual machine is like in $20 per month. There are a lot of configurations available over the virtual machines. So the cheapest one is like, and the RAM could be very less, the storage space could be very less, and it could operating system has to be the basic operating system and all. So let's see the other metrics. So the next metric is like an pay based upon the usage. So it's like an pay per usage service. So the previous one is like completely as you the consumption model. So the next is like an pay per usage services. So it could be like in functions, or it could be like in logical applications, or it could be like a storage, or as outbound bandwidth, or cognitive service application for interfaces. So one thing that you need to very much understand here, the outbound bandwidth. So it is like a trap. So you can think like a lot of services could be available in the Azure. So the inbound is like an uploading the data to the cloud. So uploading the data to the cloud is completely like a free of cost. So that we'll call it as like an inbound. So, but in case of an outbound, if you are taking out the data from the cloud to the on-premises, if you are pulling down the data from the cloud to the on-premises, that is the outbound. So the outbound is going to be cost you a lot. The inbound is completely free. So a lot of questions will come around here. So the cloud won't charge you to push your data to the cloud, because data itself, the money, the revenue generator. So once you store the data, the next time if you think that all your customer data, you want to bring it down onto on-premises, and then you want to, or as you want to think of changing the cloud service from Azure to an AWS and all. So it's the same case even with respect to the AWS or Google Cloud, or like in any of the cloud platform that you prefer. So outbound is going to be costed. It is going to be like an huge expensive. The cognitive service application peripheral interfaces will be used, and the storage based upon the pay per GB. As much that you use, you just need to pay based upon the GB, based upon that it will be charged. It's not like an if you're not used, if you have requested, like, and if you have taken the storage, and if you're not used, it not be like an expensive. As you don't want, you just based upon the usage, it's completely like an, if you're not using the service, if you're not using the storage, then it will be not charged. Pay for time. And here one thing you can observe very interestingly, it's like based upon per second. So some of the services, for example, it is like you're running an analytics, and it's not mean that you want to run an real-time analytics. So you just want to run an analytics monthly once, and for that purpose, why do you need to pay for the whole month? So, and any of the analytics resources it could be. Why do you need to pay for an analytics resources which could be like a whole month if you're not using for the whole month, only once in a month? In such cases, so you can pay based upon the time. So you can pay for like an as per like how many minutes that you have used, or as based on number of days, or as based upon number of an hours that you have used the resource. So you have to pay only for that. So not much expensive, and it's completely based upon how much that you have used, how long that you have rented. It's like a vehicle renting. So the 2-wheeler or 4-wheeler that you rent for a few hours. So as many hours that you rented, and as much that you use the long distance that you will travel, you are going to pay for that. So it's the similar way, this is completely as a service. So as long as you are going to rent the service and you're going to utilize the service from the resources, you will be charged. Per second billing means billing stops when the virtual machine is stopped. So it's not continuously keep on billing for you. So as long that you use, so only that time it will be charged for you. Yeah, per second billing is like billing stops when the virtual machine has been stopped. It's not mean that you will be continuously keep on charging you. So if you are using a virtual machine, use the virtual machine as long you need it. So if you shut down the system, if you stop the virtual machine completely, so your billing will also be stopped. The next thing is like a stability in pricing. So the stability is like pay a fixed price per month. So if you go for rent a car, rent a vehicle. So you can rent a vehicle for an hourly basis or as on daily basis. What if you rent a same car for an year? I want for a complete full year. So in such case, you are going to get some discount as well, right? The same concept will run here as well. So if you are taking a resort, you know that your business is going very well, and you are expecting that you need this many resources. For sure, it's like you need a database, you need like some of the analytics resources. you need some of the data insight resources, and you need some of the front-end development resources. From in such cases, you just go and procure those as for a fixed price for a longer duration, as for like in 1 year or as like in 3 years commitment in the virtual machines, for example. So in such cases, you will get some like a discount as well, and multi-tenant or like an isolated environment that you will take as well. But the thing is, for example, if you're in database, the database, if you are taking it for like a 200 petabytes of a database, the database, if you're not using it, so then you are paid completely. The service, either you use it, or else if you won't use it, you are going to pay for that. So that is what actually, in case of, and if you're going for a step in the long-term payment or like a one-time payment, if you're going up. Pay for bandwidth. So bandwidth is like inbound and outbound. So as I mentioned, so the inbound data is completely free. So you don't want to pay for anything for the inbound data. But if you are going to get the data out from the cloud, so as like an outbound, so then it is going to charge you a much more. And first 5 GB of data is free. So this is very, very less actually. So whenever it is like a database, you can store an image, you can store a video, you can store like a movies, you can store Word documents, you can store the PDF documents, you can store the text the data. So you can store like in different kinds of data in your database. But the 5 GB is like a very minimal, that is just for a learning purpose, free tier. So when you create an Azure account for the first time, so during the free tier or during the learning time, you'll get the 5 GB. So that 5 GB is more good enough only for the learning purpose. For the building a business or as like a project, so then to host your web service, then for sure you have to go with an higher data usage, and you will be charged based upon that. So as I keep on mentioning, the thing is like inbound data. Inbound data is completely free. It is of no charge. And one more thing that you need to understand here, bandwidth cost. So outbound data. So outbound data is like you can think like in zone 1. So in the zone 1 of North America and Europe region, so it's like an 0.05 cent to like an 0.0875 dollars. So it is like a very minimal. But the same thing, it could be like a different based upon the region. If the region is like in zone 2 in the Asia, Africa, and Ocean, so the pricing is different. The thing is like, so whatever the bandwidth cost or the resources cost, even we have discussed it like during the last classes. So the resources or as the storage resources or as different resources, even with respect to the resources, the same way, bandwidth cost also differs based upon the region. So if it is in a high demand region, then for sure it will be expensive. Even the bandwidth cost will also be expensive, and your resource cost will also be expensive. So if it is like not at all like some of the regions are not in that much demand, the business is not that huge in that region, and the customers won't prefer that region to store their data. So in such cases, there could be like a lot of, and the price will be very cheaper compared to other regions. Oh, so when I talk about a region, as we discussed in the yesterday's class architecture, so the region and the region pair and also the like a zone. In a single region, there could be a multiple zones. In a single zone, there could be a multiple data centers. As I mentioned, so inbound data is completely free. But so when you want to pull out the data from the cloud, that is the outbound data, that is going to be very expensive. So it's just one of the examples. No need to memorize the whatever the numbers that have been showing here with respect to the cost. It's just an example to make you understand the concept. So 1 petabyte of data transfer is like $52,000. Yeah, that is going to be very huge, expensive. So looks for the customer, and it acts as like a trap. So they don't switch the services from one cloud service to the other cloud services. Now, till now, we have discussed a lot of things. So one is like what are the different metrics will be used. So based upon the different metrics, how it will be charged. So it is like the different concepts is like metrics is like based upon the usage, based upon the speed, and based upon the resources that you're using, based upon the region that you are using. So based upon different metrics, you will be charged. Your cost will be calculated. Your billing will generate. So the thing is like, for example, whenever a customer comes and asks you how much to build a service, or to build a complete service, or as if your team, if your IR management asks for to build this project, what could be the expenditure? So it could be like, and because you need to maintain, you need to keep on renting the resources from the cloud. So then there's a solution for that from the Azure, which is called as a price calculator. So you can make use of this price calculator and you can estimate. So it's not like an accurate estimation that you will get it. So you can like an plus or minus few dollars. So exceptional conditions. So based upon that, you can estimate for your project, for your business, based upon the resources that you are designing, the architecture. So you can calculate how much the cost it could be. You can access the calculator in the website as mentioned, as shown on the screen, azure.microsoft.com/pricing/calculator. So in this website, you can go ahead. So you will directly access the calculator. You can access the calculator there. You can access the region. So based upon the region, you can access. You can mention what are the resources that you want to access. The resources could be a database. So what kind of a database? And if it could be like a virtual machine, how many virtual machines? What is the operating system? What is the RAM? So different things will be based upon your choice if you feel. So it will completely estimate, and it will give you the invoice. So what could be your monthly expenses, and what could be your and first time the resources once you start to use it, your billing and your subscription charges will be. As I have mentioned, so it is not the accurate 100% accuracy, you can't calculate it. So it's an estimation. You can estimate that it can go with an $800,000, or else it could be like $5,000 in a month. If it is a huge project, if it is a very less small project, it could be like $1,000 or else like $2,000. You can easily estimate. So it's not 100% accurate. As I mentioned, it could be like a plus or minus of a few dollars. Variations could be there. So once you choose resources, what are the options that you will get? So as a configurable options. So if you look into it, the region and the different type of subscription types, support options, development, testing, pricing. So these are like of 5 different types of options that you will get as a configurable. You can configure and you can choose based upon the requirement. So looking into this in detail. So first one is a region. A region will tell you can choose any region except the sovereign regions. So you remember very well. So which are the two sovereign regions? So one is the US government and the second one is UK. So sorry, the China. So US government and the China are the 2 sovereign regions. Except those 2 sovereign regions, you can choose like in any of the regions. And it's a configurable one. You can choose any of that. So and based upon that, your charging will be there. And third, subscription tax. So a subscription type has a basic type, standard type, premium types. So it's completely based upon that the services are available. And the support options. Do you need a 24/7 live support option, or else do you need over the email, over the chat support, live 24/7 live chat support, or else you just need over an email support by ticket format. So you just raise a ticket and you will be reverted back with a support. And development testing platform. So multiple resources will be there based upon, you can choose what kind of a platform that you're using. Based upon that, you'll be charged. So like there's different the configurations you can choose, you can configure your options. So now we have understood how we can estimate or bill. So it is by making use of an TCO calculator. So we have a calculator, the tool to estimate our billing. So what the thing is, once we calculate it, so it's not like you need to download or else you need to note down the billing and all. So there's an option to export and share the estimate. So whatever the estimate you have from the Microsoft tool, so directly from that tool, you can download it. You can, I mean, it's like an export it. So that export, once you did the export, it will be having a complete end-to-end details based upon the configurations that you are based upon the requirements that you have. And you can share that estimation. So the whoever will get the link. So based upon that link, if they open it, so the same link, if they, for example, as a developer, you will estimate. Once you share the estimation with your architect, the architect may think, so no, this database is not good enough. So probably you may want to go with an extra additional database. And you may found that some analytics models or all the things that you have included is not required. So in such cases, you can remove those. So that estimations you can modify as well. So just it's like a very much easy for you, for whoever it is, to export the estimation and to share the estimation. So all these features, as we are discussing till now, so it is completely supported by an TCO calculator. So the TCO, the full form is like a total cost of ownership. So the name itself tells, so as a owner, what are all the total costs that will be you have to bear? So TCO calculator. So it will mention, so what are all the total cost of ownership? So in this one, you can define your workloads, you can define adjust the assumptions, and you can view the report as well. So entire the details of your on-premises workloads and the information should ask you can as well. So you can mention the storages, you can mention the networking, you can mention the databases, you can mention the servers. So you can define the load, what kind of that load that you are providing and what kind of things that you are choosing. So in this TCO calculator, there's a concept like an I plus M minus R is equal to TCO. So I is an initial cost, I plus M is like a maintenance cost, and the other one is like an O is an operational cost. So the TCO is like an completely the total cost of ownership. So mainly the owner has to take care of an initial cost, operational cost, maintenance cost, downtime, if there is any downtime that he has to bear, production, and also remaining the volume. So completely a lot of things that he has to take care. So there's a formula for like a TCO, it's like an I plus M minus R. So I plus M means I tells there's an initial cost. So initial cost, what it could be. And plus M. So not only the initial cost, with that initial cost, what could be the maintenance? So initial cost plus maintenance cost for in the keeping in a prediction of like and for the future in mind for the 5 years. So initial cost plus the 5 years of a maintenance cost, that is an I plus M, minus R will tell us that if there is a depreciation. So depreciation is like an 5 years. So the remaining value after 5 years of a depreciation, that is an minus R. So that gives the total completely the TCO, the total cost of an ownership. So one more question may come up. So does anyone can use the TCO calculator? Yes. So you don't need any Azure subscription to work on the TCO calculator. You don't want to pay for that. You don't want even an Azure account as well. So you directly can access this TCO calculator within very few steps, as shown on the link on the screen. You can just go to the website of the Azure, and there the TCO calculator, you can directly access it. If you're going to an on-premises, there could be like a lot of other costs that you need to bear. So the one is like an electricity. So if you are maintaining an on-premises server, so for that server, totally 24/7, you need an electricity. And the cost and the servers are going to get it. So you need to maintain the temperature as well for that, right? For that purpose, the cooling is completely like an air conditioner room. Those who have a server room, those who have seen, so it's completely an AC conditioned server room. So 24/7 electricity is required and 24/7 cooling is required, and the completely internet connectivity is required. By chance, if the internet connectivity goes down, so completely server is down. If there is an electricity gone, so the server is down. And if the AC is not working, the servers will get odd and there's a possibility of damaging. And also, to handle this infrastructure on the on-premises, you need to maintain a rack space. And that is like an physical space mainly. And also, you need to set up a labor. So labor in the sense is like you need a security engineer, you need a database expert, you need a network engineer, because the network configuration, network security is much more important than network engineer. And you need like a multiple expertise in that server maintenance and all, and even the maintenance labor and the backup. So what happens if it's like due to natural calamity, if there's an impact on your server? So where does that you're going to keep the backup of all the customer data or any huge important data that you're going to use for your business? So keeping all that things, there could be like a lot of expensive than your hardware. So not only the for initial investment as a capital expenditure, so you need to take care of other costs as well. It's like an electricity, cooling, internet connectivity, rack space, and the labor setup, maintenance labor, and the backup. So different factors that you have to keep in mind. So when you want to go with an on-premises setup. So this all due to all this, it is going to be very expensive compared to an cloud features compared to an cloud computing. So this is the link for the TCO calculator. So azure.microsoft.com/pricing/TCO/calculator. So to access this one, you don't want any of the Azure subscription, or else you don't want any Azure account. So directly you can go to the website. Anyone without subscription or without permission, you can access this calculator. The very next topic that we are going to discuss is the cost. So what are the different factors that will come in the cost management? For example, it's not like the customer will be ready as much as the amount that you're going to expect. So the customer may only like a few budget. So they may tell like, this is my budget and you want to complete the project within this budget. Or else the budget is not supposed to exceed. So you have to keep all the things in mind. Based upon that, accordingly, you need to plan the project. So accordingly, based upon that, you need to plan to make use of the resources. So that's what actually comes in. What are the how to manage the cost management? So what are the different factors will come in picture to handle, and also what are all the ways that you can manage the cost and you won't exceed the limit of the budget, which is approval for the project. So to perform all that in Azure, there is a free tool which is called like an to analyze the spending, analyze your cost management. So there is like an Azure cost management tool. So cost management will, it is mainly to analyze how much that you're using. It will analyze you the past cloud usage. So how much the resources that you are using in the past, and also it will expenses and predict the future expenses. How, for example, from the 2 years, if you are a customer of an Azure, it will analyze. So what was the resource? How much the resources and that you or as the tools that you used to in the previously in the last year and the monthly basis, how much it is increasing, and it can predict as well. So for the next year, how much the billing for you as well. So based upon accordingly, you can take the permission. You can make sure that so the cost management you can handle. So Azure cost management. So whatever the tool that I'm mentioning. So the question comes up here: is that free, or is do we need to pay for that as? So Azure Cost Management is available to Azure customers. It's not like a free for, it's not like for everyone. So those who have an Microsoft Azure access and those who are the customers of an Microsoft Azure and manage the service providers, but with a completely like a no additional cost, which completely like a free. So mainly, if you ask me, what is the major purpose of this cost manager, cost management feature in the Azure? So the main purpose is not only to keeping in mind or is to predict. So it will protect your data and code while the data is in the use of the cloud, right? So it will accelerate time to market, delivery the innovative experiences, and also it will provide you the security, delivery innovative data models, modernizations, and also seamlessly it will integrate your application systems and data to the enterprises. A lot of things will come in picture. So this is the complete, just an snap of the Azure, completely the cost analysis, cost management tool. So here you can see the cost analysis tool. It will tell you pay as you go. So from the July 7th, how much the billing is keep on increasing, and it will provide you the cost analysis. Completely, it will analyze what was your accumulated cost based upon the days, or else based upon the month, or else based upon the year. So if you're a long customer, so on yearly basis, how much it's going to charge you, and even based upon the budget. So you can keep like an budget like a limit as well. If you are reaching like an, for example, $2,000 is your project budget, you can set your budget limit as well. Once it reaches to the 1,800 or as 1,500 budget, so automatically it will intimate, the system will intimate you are like an almost reaching the max budget limit of your project. So may plan accordingly in that cases. And it will forecast as well based upon the locations, how much it will charge based upon the resource group that you are, so how much it is charging. So all that will be calculated and analyzed, and it will be provide you, and also it will provide the insights as well. What could be the charges for the next upcoming month, or as the next year? How much it's going to increase, or as how much it's going to decrease? So based upon completely based upon your usage. So this tool is completely analyze your usage like in billing process. Based upon the billing, it will predict and it will tell you what it could be your next billing comes up in which way. Is it like a very high or the same, or as it's going to be less? So, and even you can get all the previous invoices and yeah, obviously not the upcoming ones. So all the previous invoices and the complete details that you can get, and if there's any external service and the payment methods options that you'll get. And there's a concept of like an activity log. So what are all the activities that you have made? If there's any changes, configurations that you have made, any settings that you have made, all the details will be handled over the activity log. So as I mentioned, so analysis tool is not just like can predict based upon the days, as is shown on the screenshot. You can analyze based upon the time as well. For example, if you are making up a virtual machine and you are hosted, you are like based on you are hosted in a US region, or as you have chosen an UK region, or as you have chosen an Asia Pacific, any of the regions. So you can also analyze on what like spending over the time as well, each hour in a day. For example, in 24 hours, what time it's good, a lot of consumption is happening. So at what time lot of an outbound request, data request, and the inbound data is coming in, and what time the virtual machines scaling up, and what time it's scaling down. So and what time the load balancer role is playing up. So how much of an analytics modules are running. So you can predict, you can also analyze completely, and you can understand your at what time the billing is going to increase, if there is any specific reasons. So based upon that, if there's a customers that they're making use of it, then it will be fine. So you are going to completely get an end-to-end idea analysis report based upon the time as well, on each hour and each minute basis. This is what I track against the budget. So for a project, there for sure there will be like a limited budget. So it's not like as much that you keep on using. So you can track based upon the budget. So once you set up a budget, so you can like track the budget as how long, for example, per month, $2,000. So in 10 days, if you have reached like $1,500, how you are going to handle it for the next 20 days. So you can plan accordingly how many resources are running, how much, if it is like an unwanted virtual machines are there, how to bring it down. If your database, if it's an unused database, how to relieve it, or as how to just unsubscribe those subscriptions, and how to bring down the billing. So all that you can plan accordingly with the track against the budget feature. All your past invoices. So whatever the invoices that have been generated, all the details that you can get it. So, and it will be completely containing the details related to how many subscriptions you had, and how much of the billing that has happened for each subscription, all the complete end-to-end details that you can get over here. You can schedule the reports. So reports is not like monthly ones. So you can schedule a report for every weekly ones. You can schedule a report to generate on daily basis, how much the billing has been generated per day. You can generate a report on monthly ones and 2 months ones. So it's completely customized over one. So you can schedule the reports based upon your requirements. As long like you want, you can take up and you can schedule the reports on the Azure. So it's completely based upon your subscription. So you can schedule only like for one is for specific resource group. You want like a daily basis. For the other group, you want it on like a weekly basis. So you can schedule the reports as per your requirement. The next is like a resource tag. So the resources, for example, there could be like multiple resources could be used for a project. The project could be like a very small project or a very big project. There could be multiple resources. The resources, it could be like including the infrastructure as a service, or it could be from the platform as a service, and it could be from the SaaS part. So it could be from the edge side, or it could be the networking side, or as the resources could be from the application side, analytics side. So it could be any kind of resources. The resources you can tag based upon the project name, from which project the resource belongs to. So based upon that resource tagging, you can generate the billing. So based upon that resource tag, so you can generate the bills, and you can make sure that okay, that's fine. So from this project, based upon the tag, you can filter it easily. You can easily filter. So for example, there's a mining project. The mining project, if you tag the mining the XYZ customer, so for all the resources that you used, if you tag it as like a mining XYZ, so then you are going to get completely the complete resources list for the XYZ project. So, and you can generate a bill for that. So tagging will makes easy. If you don't want that resources, so by making use of tagging, you can delete those resources as well. So it's completely based upon how you make use of the resources. It's like in filtering. It makes use to filter the resources. Now that you can add metadata. So metadata is like your own data from the on premises. So you are using an analytics as a resource. For that analytics resource, you can push the data. You can from you can push your inbound your metadata, and it can run the analytics. Or if you are bringing in a web application. For web application, you can inbound your metadata and you can build a web application service. So it's completely different things. What kind of a metadata that you are using? So for what purpose? So whatever the resources that you use, you can use your metadata. As I mentioned, so the inbound of the metadata is completely free. But the different way, the reverse way, outputting the database that have a huge data, and if you're taking out the data from the resources, so it could be from the database, it's going to be expensive. So the two ways the customer will think as well. So you can add metadata to the Azure resources. It could be analytics, database, or any kind of resources. You can you can inbound your metadata to the resources. It helps with billing and support issues. There could be some understanding issues, or else there could be some confusions over the billing. The support team will come in and they will help you to understand. They will help you with the issues with respect if there's any concerns with respect to the billing, and also the support team will provide, and even the support type. So it's completely based upon what kind of a support that you'll choose. So is that an 24/7 support, or else that you are going to get a ticket system based support, or else that you are going to choose an like a kind of an email based support. So only based upon that, so the support will be provided. If it is like a 24/7, all the time support you will get. So if any time issues comes up, so immediately your issue will be get resolved. So these are the different features over these tools that are available. So next is like in tools for the governance and compliance. So let's see what are the things are there with respect to the governance and compliances. So governance means it's like a rules, set of rules. So if I tell, for example, if we need to store a data from primary database to a secondary database as a backup. So by end of the day, you want to keep a database like a backup. Whereas by end of the day, you want to delete the data which is not used from which is not in use for the in last 5 years. So whereas you just want to create a store only for this many data, you need to send an intimation, for example, to few customers, whatever in a database. So you can keep a specific rule. So action items. So that is what actually the governance IT rules that will be comes up. So IT rules that they want to implement, they want to bring in. So if they want to bring in, you need to understand here. If they want to bring in a new feature, if they want to bring in a additional feature or a rules, that rule must be understood by everyone. The rule must be known to everyone. So that is the first action item. based upon the rules, let's have a, like just considering one of the example here. So let's have like a daily backup enabled on every server. So it means that from primary data center, you want to store it in a one more as a backup, and it could be in a different region as well. So as a backup, you are as a secondary source of data you are wanted to store it. So that is the example as a taking up. So in such case, you want to intimate, you want to know these rules to each and everyone. So it could be get to known by option one, by sending an email with the rules and assume everyone reads it and remembers it. It's not as like an read and forget, right? So everyone has to read that one, and they have to remember the concept, remember what are the rule it is. And the second thing is, you make use of tools over there to enforce the rule and simply audit or compliance. So the thing is, like, you can make use of an Azure tools over there. So just looking into the, it could be like an pop-up. Some of the tools you can make sure that the customer have your gone through those rules, gone through the conditions, and checkbox, or else like an verification. So different kind of tools that can be used and to enforce the rules have been understood. Rules have been understood and remembered by the customers. So to understand, to make that understanding, so one thing, as we mentioned, it is completely based upon the email. Sending an email, make sure that your customer will read that email and remember the rules. Second thing is with respect to the tools. So the tools, there are different kind of tools are there. So one is like an Azure Blueprint. So the second one is like an Azure Policy, and the third is an Resource Logs, and the fourth is like an Service Trust Portal. So let's try to understand what is an Azure Blueprint. And there is a thing called as like an Azure Resource Manager template. So this is also acts as a template. So let's understand what is an Azure Blueprint, what actually it consists of, what are all the things will come in an Azure Blueprint. Okay, so Azure Blueprint, the name itself tells it's like it's already have a template. So Blueprint. So it is like currently in preview. So the supplemental terms and of the like an Azure Microsoft previews. So it is like an additional legal term that apply to the Azure features that are in a beta preview and otherwise not yet released into the general availability. Let it be. So let's understand in detail. Blueprint allows engineer, it could be or as an architect who will say sketch the project design parameters. Azure Blueprint actually enables the cloud architects and also central information technology groups to define a repeatable set of Azure resources that implements and adheres the organizational standards, patterns, and the requirement. So Blueprint actually makes it possible for development of teams to rapidly build and to start up a new environment, and with the trust they build with the organization compliance. So it's not mean that they want to go with each and everything rules and from the scratch creating by themselves. So it is like the blueprint, the ready template is available. So how to make use of the blueprints is like an how to make use of the resources, what kind of an rules has to be there for with respect to the resources. The blueprint will give the complete ready accessible. So you can just directly make use of the ready template and you can start the environment for your project. So without wasting time. So the blueprint is like a predefined rules. We can mention it like a predefined rules. So it have like it will support you with the building within the organization components and set to the building the components, such as like a networking to speed up the development and the delivery things. So here one more thing to understand is blueprints are like an declarative way. So it is the development in the various resource templates. So it could be things like an role assignment, policy assignment. What is the role? What are the different kind of roles can come in, and what are the roles that could access the resources, and what are the policy assignments will come in. And also that describes like an Azure Resource Manager template. It's like a manager template will tell how the resource manager. There are different resources will be there, right? So how the resources will be taken care, how the resources will be handled, that will be explained over the resource management template, and also the resource groups. So Azure Blueprint is like an backend by like a globally distributed Azure Cosmos DB. So blueprint objects are replicated to multiple Azure regions. So this replication always provide like a low latency, high availability, and consistent access to your blueprint objects. The next is like an Azure policy. So Azure policy helps to enforce organizational standards and also to access the compliance at a scale. So going at it like an launch of an Azure policy service is like an Azure portal. In the Azure portal, you can launch the Azure policy services by the selecting some of the all the services, then searching for like and selecting the policy, and you can make it. So there's the steps. So there is a difference in between the Azure role and the policy. The policy is like an is compliances dashboard. So it provides the aggregated view to evaluate the overall state of the environment, with the ability to drill down to the per resource, per policy granularity. So there's a difference between the Azure role and the policy. Policy is mainly focused on the property of the resources. So RBAC that we have discussed is focused on what resources the users can access. So that's what actually main. If you look into the difference in between the policy and the blueprint, Azure policy is an access system. So that provide default allow and deny, either default allow it or it's like a denied on new or existing resources in which policy apply. But in case of a blueprint, is like a baggage to create like and govern the implement of Azure services, security, and the design. So the effect of like an Azure policy is like to create a list of all assignments that apply to the resources and evaluate the resource against the each definition will be taken care. And the thing is like this Azure policies, it like we can define our own policies, we can define our own assignments and apply to that which can apply to the resources. But here, so is it like a free of charge again? So there is no charge for the Azure policy. You can go ahead and you can customize the policies and allow the customers to define their own rules to using the using an Azure, it's an Azure policy. So it is completely and free of cost as well. So as mentioned, it is to evaluate and compliance to the rules. Examples of some of the policies like can require an SQL Server 2.12.0, allowing the storage accounts and allowed locations, allowed virtual machines, and also the applying the tag by the default name and not allowed like resources types. So some of the resources types which are not allowed for access to the each and everyone. So it is completely differs based upon the resources. Now it's like an how can we create these policies? So it's completely based upon the JSON. So by making use of an JSON, you can completely like in customized or else your own resources that can be created. So what actually this JSON will support? If you ask like in what actually, if you some of the like from CS background and all probably have an idea about what is in JSON. This is a completely again JavaScript. So JavaScript object notation. So which is a standard text-based format. So that represents the structured data based upon JavaScript object syntax. So it is commonly used for like in transmitting the data in the web applications. So that's what it can be like in JavaScript. JSON can be used easily to handle all these things. So the next is like an Azure logs. As an administrator, if you want to log some of the subscription, it's not like everyone can access it. It is limited to a very few of them. So administrator can log an Azure subscription, a resource group, or else resources to protect them from an accidental like an user deletion or modification by accident. Instead of deleting something, if they delete a very important one. So to avoid such cases, the administrator actually can lock all the subscriptions or as the resources or as the resource groups or as based upon the tag. So they can completely lock the resources from the modifications as well. So there are two type of locks are there in Azure. So one is like an check-in logs and the other is a checkout logs. So we can apply the lock to prevent like an accidental deletions of like a virtual machine. So to delete it, we have to like an unassign and or delete the lock first. So, but when Azure provides the multiple delete lock on the same resources, even a single lock will work as like an as same as like a multiple locks. So this is an snap of resources can be like in lock resources group. You can go ahead and you can create a resources group locking, and you can go ahead and create a locking for the subscriptions. And based upon the tag, so you can create a lock for each and every resources as well. So different kind of locks that you can create. So yesterday we have discussed an Azure RBAC. So RBAC is like completely a role-based access control. So based upon the role, so even if it is like a locked, administrator are locked, but the manager and the team lead need an access. So in such cases, based upon the role, so it's like a role-based access control. So role-based is a system that provides like a fine-grained access management for Azure resources. So using an RBAC, you can segregate the duties within your team and grant only the amount that is like based upon the required access. So only can grant such the limited access as well. So the next is Azure Service Plus Portal. So let's understand what is a Service Plus Portal, what actually it will provide in detail. So Service Plus Portal
is a Microsoft public site. So the websites that are the website link that I've shown here. So you can access the public site. It's like a public website links. So service is like anyone can access it for the publishing the audit report and the compliance related information associated with the Microsoft Cloud services. So compliance manager is like a dashboard, right? So that you can use to track the standards, regulations, assignments, while the trust documents are including the audit report, other data protection information, so much more. So using this service trust, you can access it as well. So as a public website, public portal, public website, so you can access all these published audit reports and the compliance reported information. So these are the two website link to completely access those information. This is the snap of the audit report website. There is the Azure Service Trust Portal website snap. Cool. So we have discussed much more with respect to the portal compliances and all. So how it will be taken care. Let's discuss some of the tools. Let's try to understand which are the basic tools which should be used in Azure. So it is like an Azure command line interface, Azure PowerShell, Azure portal. So and even the Azure Cloud Shell and the mobile application. So let's understand each of them, what actually these tools will support to do and what are the features that will support in this tool. Sorry. So let's start with the Azure tools. So first, let's try to understand the very important tool, which is an Azure command line interface. So Azure command line interface, probably those who have used the Linux. So those who have used like an Linux operating system, which is like an Ubuntu, Fedora, probably you may are much more familiar with the command line interfaces. So Azure command line interface is like is a set of commands used to create, manage resources. So Azure command line interface is like an available across the Azure services, and it is designed to get your work like quickly within Azure. So you can make use of the commands over there. So straightforward, like to create a, like an how we will use in the Linux operating system. So to create a folder or to create a file, to compile the resources, or else to delete the resources. For the same way, you can make use or else to customize or to modify the resources. You can make use of the command line interface. It is like an across the platform command line tool to connect the Azure and the execute the administrative commands on the Azure resources it works. So, and the next one is like an Azure PowerShell. So Azure PowerShell is like a set of commandlets. So for example, managing the Azure resources directly from the PowerShell. So PowerShell is like a design to make it easy to learn and to get started with. But provides like a powerful feature for the automation. So the main difference in between the Azure, like in just the normal PowerShell and the Azure PowerShell. So the Azure PowerShell is a set of commandlets. So it's a packaged as a PowerShell module, and it's not an executable. Windows PowerShell that you probably have seen is must be used to install the Azure modules. Like an Windows PowerShell is a standard scripting shell, so that comes like a pre-installed with your Windows operating system. Probably you may have seen in your Windows, those who have used the Windows. So PowerShell experience in Azure, like Azure Cloud Shell, it runs with an version like in 7.2 in a Linux environment. So this especially used to design for the managing and administrating Azure resources for the command line, and also PowerShell when you want to build automated tools for the Azure Resources Manager model. So you can make use of this PowerShell and create those things, or if you want to delete the resources, you can perform that as well. So that if you ask like in what are the is there any disadvantages over the PowerShell? So it requires like a .NET framework and object-based thing, which is completely with the more shell, and also the security risk. So these are the three things which will comes up in mind if there's any disadvantages over the PowerShell. The next is like an Azure Arc. So Azure Arc is a bridge actually that extends the Azure platforms to help you to build the application and the services with an flexibility. So to run across the data centers. So as I told, this is like this acts Azure Arc will act as like a bridge, so that enables the Azure platforms to help you to build application services with the flexibility and run across like in different data sensors, different data centers, and at the edge side, and also at the cloud side, multi-cloud platforms. It helps to develop cloud native applications with a consistent development operations and the security model. So does the AWS equipment of an Azure has the concept of an AWS outpost like and geared towards the customers with hybrid cloud architecture. So this Arc actually Arc enabled SQL managed instances. So these all the things will work as like a platform as a service, especially SQL Server on the Azure Arc enabled servers provides the capabilities with the as a platform as a service. If you ask like in this Arc, so Azure Arc is like a platform as a service and software as a service. This it supplies like an high-tech medical equipment with respect to the to deliver like a software as a services. For that, this as a support, it will work to build the infrastructure, to build to run your code, or as to run the resources that you need. So as a platform. So to develop and for example, this Arc actually to develop the cloud native applications with a consistent development operations and the security model. It runs on both the new and the existing hardware, virtualization and the Kubernetes platform, or else it could be an IoT devices, integrated systems, and many more. So consistent development of an operation experience to run the cloud native applications anywhere and on the Kubernetes platform is supported, and development of like a data services like an SQL, Postgres SQL as cloud native service in for environment for data insights will supported. Azure security and governance for applications, data, and the infrastructure services will be supported. And even with a flexible infrastructure, connectivity options to meet the regulatory and the latency requirement will also be supported with the Azure Arc. As mentioned, this Azure Arc manages the virtual machines, Kubernetes, clusters, and the databases as if they are running on the Azure. So it's supposed to manage all these things and it acts as a bridge over the infrastructure. So the next is like an Azure Resource Manager template. We call it as like an ARM template. So for example, probably you are tired of like in clicking around the Azure portal, creating the virtual machine, storage accounts, and the application service, right? So you may have like in multiple times in the different services, like in, for example, you may have to create something or as to generate an email. You may have in the portal probably multiple times by clicking the same option you could have typed. So to make the reliable method, like in creating the same environment multiple times. So it sounds like you need to write some kind of a template. So the same thing. For example, one application is there, you need a same kind of an application back to back, like in 3 to 4 times. So the same resources has to be used to handle those things. This ARM, that is an stands for like an Azure Resource Manager. So this will be used, which is like a Microsoft deployment and the management service on the Azure. So that use an ARM management layer for creating, updating, and the deleting the Azure resources. So this ARM template actually are a form of an infrastructure as a code and a concept where you define with respect to the infrastructure you need to be like in deployed, and by clicking like in portal, creating the virtual machines, writing the scripts and all. Sorry, there was a network break. Um, so I was talking about an ARM templates. So in this one, there are like a lot of benefits are there. So using an ARM template is like managing your Azure environment that are like in many benefits. As already mentioned, so it is like an using an declarative syntax removes the requirement of writing a complicated deployment scripts to handle like a multiple development scenario. That is especially the same development scenario. So ARM template also provide and repeatable results. So and also like an meaning you can write and you can like and deploy the same templates as many times that you want to get into it. So the Azure Resource Manager, sorry, it went somewhere. Yeah. The ARM, that's an Azure Resource Manager, also take care like an order of an operation the deployments. As a result, ARM deploys the dependent resources in the correct order, and when possible, it deploys in the parallel or faster deployments. You can also extend this Azure Resource Manager template with like a deployment script. So writing like in PowerShell or as Bash or as like a complete end-to-end environment setup you can make use. Yeah. So this ARM is an resource manager. So as we discussed the Azure portal, PowerShell, command line interface, and the rest is a representation of state transfer architecture clients. So if they want to create a resource or else delete a resource, or else if they want to customize the resource, so everything that has to be get done through the Azure Resource Manager.
if any request comes from the REST, or as it could be like a portal, PowerShell, or the command line interface, the request will be authenticated. So once the request is authenticated, based upon that, the resources will be generated or else it will be deleted. So the resource manager have a template. So for example, this is a web application. For a web application, what are all the resources are required? There could be 5 resources. In some of the huge project, it could be like an around 20, 30 so different kind of resources could be used. The same things it need to be repeated. So in such cases, the template actually supports. The template will help to create the resources back to back as a repeated way. So that which is called as an Azure resource template. So we can see here that is also in a JSON. So how this template, for example, for the database has been created. So what is the standard, what kind of an version, which database, all that has been in a JSON. We can, it could be like an, the template could be generated. This is the sample of the template. So you can see here the template, the basics, like writing the first template. So the template actually uses the JavaScript object notation that is in JSON syntax. So that includes like an advanced capabilities where the with respect to some of the parameters allow you to pass like in different values to the ARM template for during the deployment. So the next is like an Azure Advisor. So the name itself tells its functionality, actually what it's going to perform. So Azure Advisor is like an personalized analysis. Actually, it is a personalized advisor, like an analysis for the configurations and the usage telemetry, offer like a personalized actionable recommendations that help you to optimize your Azure resources, mainly for the reliability, security, and the operational excellence and the performance and even the cost wise. So this Azure Advisor works completely with respect to make sure that customer will make use of the resources in a reliable way, make use of the resources in a secure way, and make use of the resources like an operational excellence way, and performance wise it has to be good, and the cost wise also it's not supposed to be much more. So in all the aspects, this Azure Advisor will work for the customer. So if you look into the task, like it can, like, and the task is to perform to integrate the Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, that estimate the cost of the Azure solutions, confirm that like an Azure subscriptions security followed by the best practice way. So all those things will be taken care with respect to the Azure Advisor. There's a concept called as like an Azure Monitor as well. If you see the difference here, the Azure Monitor and the Advisor, it accumulates the data from the monitor resources, from the monitor, whatever the monitor, what it will do, it will just keep on watching the data. It will keep on monitoring, or else it will keep on visualizing the things. So Azure Monitor will just collect the data. So it won't go and advise. So here, this advisor, it accumulates the data from the monitored resources, utilizing the Azure Monitor different metrics. On the other hand, advisor, what it will do is it will present the best method to optimize the workload. So like a step-by-step guidance and immediate actions for the fast remediations. So that all will be taken care by the Azure Advisor. But the monitor won't perform those things. The monitor is just collect the data and provide the visualization. For example, you have like 100 resources, either all the 100 resources are running, and those many of the resources are running, those many of the resources are being stopped. So that could be, you can see on the monitor. So, but the advisor will, what it will do, these are the resources which have been not used from the last 20 days or 10 days, and you are paying an usage for that. So, but it is allocated for you. So just it will help you to especially it will help you to optimize the workload. So the advisor, as the name itself tells, it will monitor, it will collect the data, or else it will accumulate the data from the monitored resources, and then in the other way, it will help you to optimize the workloads. So, and even you may think, will this advisor help in the cost perspective? So here you can see there are two recommendations are there in the cost perspective in this diagram. Sorry, in this snapshot which has been captured. So reduce cost and increase the efficiency of your cloud investment, and also like an Azure advisor offers an actionable recommendations to help you to optimize your Azure resources in the aspect of reliability, security, operational excellence, performance, and the cost and all. So, and there is one more thing. So there is a difference. There is a concept called like a security center. So what actually this Azure advisor and the security center is going to do? So this Azure advisor integrates with an Azure security center. Here you have to understand the Azure advisor is working with an Azure monitor as well. So because to accumulate the data from the monitored resources and utilizing those resources information to optimize the Azure workload. In the other side, Azure advisor is working with an security center. So mainly like it integrate with the security center to provide critical security recommendations, helping to prevent, detect, and respond to the security threats. So there could be like a multiple security threats and all. So to help over there, also it will support. And one more thing here that I remember is like so Azure advisor can be integrated with like in which one? So which services? If you think of Azure advisor provides you consistent like a consolidated view of recommendations all the time. So which is related to the Azure resources. Yes, and it actually integrates with then Microsoft Defender. So in recently which has came up, the concept called like a Microsoft Defender, which has been released, the services which has been offered from the Microsoft for the cloud to bring security recommendations. So there you actually can get the security recommendations from the security tab on the advisor dashboard. So related to the security aspects. So cool. So till now, we understood about an Azure advisor. Let's understand what is an Azure service health. So when it comes, we are understanding like in different concepts here. So one is like an Azure monitor, the other is like an Azure defender, and the other like an Azure advisor. So and the other one is like an security aspect. So this service is what it is going to provide. So what are the features this tool is going to offer? Let's understand it. So a service will keep you like an informed about the health of your environment, of your virtual environment. So of your virtual cloud environment. So this helps you to inform about the health of your environment. It's like a virtual environment. It provides like a personalized view. So it's not like an in general view. It's a personalized view of the status of the Azure services and the regions. It include like an information about an planned maintenance, current incidents, and also offers like a richer functionality, including the alert and all. So now again, if you just check like what is the difference? What is the major difference in between the service health and the monitor? So the monitor helps you to understand how your applications are performing and proactively identify issues affecting them and the resources that are especially that depends on. But in the same time, the Azure Service helps you to stay informed and take action when Azure service issues like an outages and the planned maintenance affect. So which are coming up. So in such cases, this Azure Service Health will come in and it will support. So here you can see this is snap for the completely based upon the multiple selected regions. You can see over here there are like a multiple regions are there. So among those multiple regions, so wherever the survey, the issues are there, so which has been highlighted over the green, so the 6 selected regions are there, but among the 4, there could be some of the issues are there. So looking at the next slide, so you can see here in North Europe, there is an like a service issue. So the time range is like, and you are filtering it up before like in last 24 hours, what all the issues have raised. So in that one of the service issue which is came up is an connectivity issue. That is from the North Europe, the connectivity issue has been raised. So this is completely an event type, incident based. So it is an network infrastructure issue. So the region is in North Europe, and when the issue has been started, and what is the issue name? It's a connectivity issue. And if you look at the bottom, the complete root cause analysis will be given for this connectivity issue. So it's like an impacting in between the 7:50 and the 8:36 UTC and the 22nd May. It's just based upon the cast snap which has been taken, and a subset of the customers may like can have experienced. So this is like what is the root cause for that one. So if you want to make any configurations, so that action you can take up. So service health is in that way. So in which region, what is the cause is happening, what is the uh, event. So the like a service issue or like a different kinds of events has been generated. So and even what will be the root cause for that. So all the complete details will be given from the service health of the Azure. Okay, so now coming back, that's an Azure monitor. Just now, like an till now we were discussing about an Azure monitor. So if we, for example, with respect to the Azure advisor. So with the advisor also we have compared what is an Azure monitor, how it like an how it will be like an different from the Azure monitor. And also like an Azure service health also we have compared what actually the Azure monitor when it is compared with an services, what how these two are different. So keeping those things in mind, so let's discuss with the Azure monitor. We'll try to understand what actually the Azure monitor is. So Azure monitor will actually log is a it will logs completely. It is like a log data platform. So that collects all the activity logs and resources logs along to the other monitoring data to provide like a deep analysis across your entire set of resources. So it will just completely monitor each and everything that you have done to your resources, when these resources have been created, how many times these resources will be utilized in a day, and how much the utilization in the space or as over the time is happening from each resources or as a resource group, and what are all the different how many resources that you have deleted at what time and when. So all the complete data that is a log and resource log that collects the uh, platform that collects the activity log, what are all the activity that you perform. So in this perspective of an activity log, one thing, and the second thing as a it will collect the resource log. So in the both the perspective, activity log and the resource log, it will collect all the information. So and it helps to access at what time the resources are executing and how much it is. So it helps to like can maximize the availability and the performance of your application and the services. So this Azure Monitor delivers like a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting the telemetry from your cloud to an on-premises environment. So that actually the information helps you to understand like how your applications are performing, proactively identify issues that affecting them and all. So for example, if you ask me like a few examples that could like do with the Azure Monitor. So it could be like can detect and diagnose the issue across the application dependencies. That is an application insight, or else it could be like can correlate the infrastructure issue with respect to the virtual machine insight and the container insight. Other thing it could be like an drilling into the monitoring data with log analytics or troubleshooting with deep diagnostics. Other concepts, other examples could be like can collect data from like a monitored resources by using the Azure monitor metrics. So these are like a different examples that we can think of, which where the Azure monitor can provide. So there is a service called like an Azure Lighthouse. So this Azure monitor will support that Azure Lighthouse, which lets the service provider sign into their own tenant to manage the subscription and resources, and the customers are like and delegated. So here you can what the diagram that you are seeing. So it gives like a very high level view of an Azure monitor. So the stores of the data platform are like an so that is that sorry. So the stores of the data platform are the like centers of the diagram, right? So the Azure monitor stores the fundamental types of data like metrics and the logs, or it is like an traces and the changes. So whatever it could happen. So the resources of monitoring data that populate these data stores and where it has been left, and different functions that Azure monitor perform with the collected data are the right ones, and which indicate such actions of an analysis alerting. So in the bottom of the layer in the integration piece, so this is actually I can integrate it throughout the other parts of the diagram, but like too complex to visualize. Very in the eye level, it has been shown. So multiple each and every aspect it has been connected at. It will take care of a log, and with respect to the activity, each and every things will be noted down with the Azure monitor. So keeping like it is like an observing the things. The monitoring means it's like an kind of an observing. So metric logs are as distributed traces, which are like in commonly referred as like in three pillars of the observability. So which can be achieved by aggregating the or correlating the different types of data across the entire system which has been monitored. So Azure Monitor stores data as a metrics, logs, or as the changes. So traces are like a stored in the log store, and each storage platform is optimized for like particular monitoring scenario. And each store actually the supports the different features over there. So like in that let's can implement understand the scenario of the most of the efficient and the cost effective manner. The pillars like in metrics, logs, distributed traces, changes. This is what actually the metrics and the logs will be taken care. So Azure Monitor aggregates and correlates the data across the multiple Azure subscription tenants, in addition to the hosting data for other services, because this data is actually stored together. It can be like correlated or analyzed using the common set of tools. And also one more thing to understand here, for many Azure resources, So Azure Monitor is a tool, but there are for many Azure resources. You will see data collected by Azure Monitoring right in their overview page. So it is like an Azure portal. So look at like any virtual machine. For example, you will see several charts that display the performance metrics. So select like in any of the graphs open into the metric explorer in the Azure portal. And also the log data collected by the Azure Monitor can be analyzed and with the queries to quickly retrieve and consolidate the things which has been collected and like an analyze collected data. You can also create and test the queries by using an log analytics user interface. So that comes in the Azure portal. So you can make use of the log analytics user interface in the Azure portal. So you can either directly analyze the data by using the different tools or save the queries for the using the visualization of or alert the rules especially.
So for this, we have understood the module 3 as well. Let's try to understand the what is an Azure tenant. So actually, it is called as like an Azure Active Directory tenant. It is an reserved Azure Active Directory service instance, so that an organization receives, especially instance of that an organization receives, and once it signs up for a Microsoft Cloud service such as like Azure iTunes, Intune, or as like a Microsoft 365. So if you ask like, what is the major difference in between this Azure tenant and versus the subscription? Azure Active Directory tenant is a specific instance of Azure Active Directory containing accounts and groups. So paid or trial subscriptions of the Microsoft 365 or Dynamic 365, including an free Azure Active Directory tenant. So Active Directory tenant does not include other Azure services, and this is not the same as in the Azure trial or the paid subscriptions. So this Azure tenant, actually the Active Directory tenant will provide a single place to manage users, groups, and their permissions for the applications published in the Azure Active Directory. So if you compare like then is there any relation in between the Azure tenant and the Azure Directory, Active Directory? So each directory has like in one or more domains. So directory can have like in many subscriptions isolated with it, but only like in one tenant, a domain in a like in DNS zone, domain name service zone, for which a tenant has like in proven the ownership. So there's a concept of like in Microsoft tenant as well. So Microsoft 365 tenant is the set of services assigned with our organization. Typically, this tenant is associated with one or more public domain name service DNS domain names, and acts as a central and isolated container for different subscriptions and licenses.
So the question comes here is like, a tenant means, is it a cloud? So tenants is the most fundamental construct of a software as a service environment. So as a SaaS provider building an application, you are like in making this application available to your customers, and the customers that are sign up to use your environment are represented as the tenants of your system. So the thing is like, whoever the customers that are sign up to your environment, so those customers will be represented as the tenants for the system. So now the company can have like a multiple Azure tenants. So Azure Active Directory can have multiple tenants. So in such case, Azure Active Directory can be used by any like in any organization to manage identities and access the right of their employees. So Azure Active Directory allows organizations to centralize authentications and authorization for their users, right? So it's possible. So the tenant, why you might think like, why the name tenant have been added? The tenant ID may be called for different names in the different applications and resources here. For example, tenant ID may be referred to as like an directory ID. So the Azure Active Directory, there is an Azure AD tenant. So Microsoft ID, or for certain reports or like in tenant guides, so different terms, the tenants will be used in the Azure. So coming back, so we have discussed much more about the module 3. So the module 3 is consisting of a lot of the things. So it is like we have discussed in the management and the governance perspective. So we discussed then cost management in Azure. So what are the different ways the cost management will be taken care in the Azure? And also we have discussed in detail understanding with respect to the tools, that is like a total cost of ownership TCO tool that we have discussed in the modules, the first subtopic. So how the estimation could be done for any project. So what could be the estimation way it will be there. And so in the perspective of billing, for example, which are the different factors your bill will be generated. So in the cost management, so it is like an paper usage, or else it could be like an paper time and different perspective. So it's like an factors that affects like a paper usage, paper like in time, or as like a web applications and the functions and all we have discussed, and the calculator, TCO calculator that we have discussed, and the best practices reducing the cost in Azure we have discussed. And the module 2 we have discussed in the module 3. Sorry, in the module 3, the second subtopic we have discussed with the blueprint, policy examples, and resource locks, lock access control, trust portal, and all we have discussed. Cool. We have discussed much more concepts, so that's much I have for today. So tomorrow, again at 6 p.m., we are going to sync up. So we are going to have a round of revision at the time. Sorry. So we have discussed then much more about all the different subtopics of the
Azure. So even the last subtopic, like in there's a monitoring tools in Azure is very much interesting one. So we discuss Azure Advisor, Service Health, Monitor, and also, and even the understood like an Azure Monitor, and what are the difference in between those. So what is the mainly, I mean, with respect to the each Azure tools, what are all the differences in between among them? So we have understood those as well in detail. So even with respect to the before understanding that we have so many tools that we have seen in this model, that is the subtopic 3 and the subtopic 4. In the subtopic 3 is like an portal, what is then cloud shell, like in PowerShell command line interface. So how to create those resources, modify the resources, delete the resources. So we have understood all those things aspects in detail. And even coming into the like a last subtopic is like an advisor, services, monitor. So we have understood much more in detail with respect to the tools in the Azure.